everybody, it's Black Spring with Autumn on this Saturday. I hope everybody is doing well, and I know that we are all totally submerged into the election season. We are post acquittal for President Donald Trump, and there's just so many things going on, so many positive things, and every now and then, you might hit a bump with the mainstream media when it comes to, you might hit something of a twilight zone. And that actually kind of brings me to our segment for today, in which we are going to actually explore. We're going to explore something from an article from the New American entitled Obama's Commie Green Czar Van Jones. Quote, "Wake up, folks. Trump is winning over blacks." Now, here again, this is our trusted source, the New American, and this is written by Selwyn Duke. So if you don't mind going with me here to this particular article. Now, this was written on February 7th, 2020, on Friday. Now, I'll start here. I'll read this, and now, of course, I'll provide the link for you in the description box. But I just want to start with this particular article, and we'll talk a little bit in the second segment about just a small bit about, I guess, strategies, or we'll talk about just a little bit about the Democrats, commie debate from last night. And so with that, let's get started here. So as you can see, I'll go ahead and start. Quote, "I'll have those in voting Democrat for 200 years." End quote. Author Ronald Kessler quoted President Lyndon B. Johnson as saying, but this prediction may fall flat, according to CNN analyst, ex-Obama Green Job czar and his self-proclaimed communist Van Jones. Rendering commentary on CNN after the State of the Union address Tuesday night, Jones warned Democrats that they may face electoral disaster in November because President Trump is, quote, going after enough black votes to cause us problems. While Trump won only 8% of the black vote in 2016, which accords with post-1970 GOP norms, a January Rasmussen poll shows black voters support for the president doubling during the last year alone to a striking 42%. As the online Daily Caller reports, what he was saying to African Americans can be effective, end quote, Jones told CNN panel following Trump's State of the Union address. Quote, "You may not like it, but he mentioned HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. Black colleges have been struggling for a long time. A bunch of them have gone under. He threw a lifeline to them in real life in his budget. He talked about this. He talked about criminal justice reform. He talked about opportunity zones." Jones insisted that blacks will overlook Trump's normal, inelegant rhetoric, such as Trump's reported use of the phrase whole nations to describe third world countries, and embrace the policies that Trump is promoting. Jones proceeded to say that leftists have to, quote, wake up, end quote, that they're living in a, quote, bubble, end quote, which everyone reinforces the mistaken notion that Trump's rhetoric, as liberals perceive it, will permanently alienate blacks. But actions speak louder than words, and Trump can say to blacks, look, quote, at my results and my record for black people, end quote, the analyst explained. So if you don't mind, let's have a look at Van Jones from CNN.
Latinos and the African Americans. That's what you see. He went hard on the sanctuary city stuff. Mm-hmm. That is very, very disturbing. It turns out sanctuary cities are actually safer than non-sanctuary cities. The Cato Institute, which is libertarian, has come out and said that immigrants are committing less crime. So for some reason he thinks that doubling down on the anti-immigrant piece is a big part of his thing. At the same time, warning the Democrats. What he was saying to African Americans can be effective. You may not like it, but he mentioned HBCUs. Our black colleges have been struggling for a long time. A bunch of them have gone under. He threw a lifeline to them in real life in his budget. He talked about that. He talked about the criminal justice reform. He talked about opportunity zones.
This school choice.
He talked about school choice.
Yeah.
Listen, wake up.
He doesn't have to be effective. He has to be effective to move margins at key states.
And the thing about it is, and I think that we got to wake up, folks. There's a whole bubble thing that goes on. We say, well, he said S-hold nations, therefore all black people are going to hate him forever. That ain't necessarily so. And I think what you're going to see him do is say, you may not like my rhetoric, but look at my results, look at my record to black people. If he narrowcasts that, it's going to be effective, which means as we move through this primary process, we've got to pay a lot more attention both to what's going on with the Latino vote. Are we going to get a benefit in terms of having them respond? And with the black vote, is there going to be a split off, especially for black male voters? We got to be clinical about this stuff. We get so emotional about it. That was a warning to us, a warning shot across the bow of Democrats that he's going after enough black folks to cause us problems. It's not just the white suburban voters. He's going after black votes.
The problem. Can I just say one thing about this? The problem with that for him that he's going to have to balance is this was a speech off a teleprompter that was finely calibrated. Then you get into the room in those rallies and things are said that undo whatever he was trying to do there.
But then you look at some of the things they are doing on the ground in some of these communities. I mean, he talked about opportunity zones, and I've been talking to some of the Republicans black Republicans who do work in the administration, and they're doing some real work and reach out to some of these African American communities.
So we got to work hard. We got to work hard.
I just want to go to Jim Acosta. We're going to have more on the exchanges.
All right. So that's going to round out the coverage or the segment, the clip that I'm actually offering on Van Jones. So let's just talk just for a second about Van Jones. Now, of course, Van Jones is an analyst on CNN, and it's not a trusted source here for this particular platform, this particular channel. But we have to look at both sides to be as objective and to be as balanced as offer as much balance as we can. However, Van Jones actually offered some credibility to the Republican Party last year when the First Step Act was signed. And there was an entire event at the White House, an actual First Step Act previous offenders who were doing sentences based on, these were nonviolent crimes, whether they were most of them I think were dealing with substance abuse and of course maybe some other offenses. But Van Jones actually threw some credit to conservatives and to Republican governors or Republican leadership for their handling of the First Step Act and just criminal justice reform overall, their actual approach to dealing with criminal justice. And he said, he was just generally, I'm paraphrasing, that they're doing this much better than I did it. So Van Jones never ceases to amaze me with, and actually Van Jones was invited to another platform which of course featured more conservatives, and he spoke specifically about the actual First Step Act, and he basically reiterated what he said, and there were a couple of jeers and cheers for Van Jones in the crowd. Oh, hey, come on over, Van Jones. We know you're interested in what we're doing here. Come on over. Come on over to the team. There's a place for you on the team. And of course, I think I was surprised that CNN and the liberal state, they received him. They allowed him to return to his platform on CNN, and that he did receive criticisms and attacks from other liberals for, of course, commingling with conservatives that actually make a difference in and are actually clean up the liberal state and their atrocities on, the black community and more. So so Van Jones. So that's that part of Van Jones. But then also, they make a mistake. For them to underestimate this president has also been a huge downfall, and they've just been a machine of propaganda and distortion and just many things. I mean, I could talk about many things when he mentioned, he talked about, you know, criminal justice, and he talked about, the president just didn't talk about these things. He was actually doing things and actually signing bills that the previous administration did not achieve. He actually did something. He did something. He actually signed these bills, and many people have been not only reunited with their families, they have attained jobs, and there are people that are successfully working and have successfully come through this First Step Act program. So they kind of get a little bit beside themselves, and they're still dealing with a lot of denial, and it's a bit of an 11th hour strategy for them to say, hey, we need to pay attention to the strategies of Donald Trump because what he's doing can be effective. No, not only can it be effective, it is effective. He didn't just propose things. He didn't just talk about these things. He was effective. Now, if you want to talk about what's orthodox, or you want to be if you're still offering opinions about Trumpisms or Trump style, then that's what you lost the battle in that. All blacks are not some soft shell, or we're not eggshells. If he said S-hole, many black people can handle S-hole because, you're dealing, if that's what they perceive as truth, then that's what it is. We have a big PR problem with CNN, perception and reality. And that's where they've made a lot of mistakes. If they're talking about, I'm not here to mitigate the mistakes of CNN or analysts like Van Jones. I'm just pointing out, strategy and tactics and effective. It's not a can. If you're still dealing with the word can in 2020, right before primaries, then your 11th hour on recognizing what Donald Trump's effectiveness has actually been, what his successes are. He's already won. He's not having to pander. He's not having to do any of those things because he was making he's so far ahead of them. They focus their energies on so much propaganda and demoralization of the black community that they've lost. That's where the loss is at this point. So I'll continue. However, I do want to say on another specific note, the Rasmussen poll came out last year, and the Democrats, the liberals, there was absolute mockery for that. Many people mocked. Oh, even Ana Navarro, you can find clips of her, claiming, discrediting what the Rasmussen poll said about Trump's polling with blacks. So, they were too busy pushing the lie and the rhetoric, the hate Trump rhetoric. They've done this to themselves, if that's where they're coming from at this point. And so it's just generally we're talking about CNN and the propaganda that they push, and then of course this other analyst or whatever, a part of the panel, talks about a teleprompter and da 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 da. See, there again, if they take a half of an inch forward, then they take 2 steps back. Oh, well, something's happening in those speeches and at those rallies. Well, a lot of people have been to Trump rallies, and more people are attending Trump rallies. So, there again, they're offering a lot more lies and propaganda. It's all you don't have to look for. It's always available for you on CNN. The panel itself is very subvergent to whatever efforts that they're trying to do, because they just won't accept reality. They've CNN is a media cartel. They have not shown the president's rallies. Maybe if you let America see what Trump's saying and doing at his rallies, and you would know. You said something's going on, something's happening at those rallies. Well, it's a shame that you're not letting everybody see what that something is, because you would have even fewer people would be following if you could see. I mean, everybody is not going to be handled with soft hands. President Trump's not a PC president, and he's not offering that. He's not a PC president. So, if they forget about that, a teleprompter still does not make President Donald J. Trump stay on a teleprompter. He has natural ability to give speeches. And he has natural ability to improvise on those speeches. And he's going to get the attention of his audience. So, is the teleprompter really the problem? I don't think so. I think that you've got failed Democrat policies. You've got a history of the Democrats' treatment of the black community and removing fathers from homes in the 60s. You've got you've got a whole culture of Democrats suppressing the black community. They have yet to own up to their own history, their own mistakes, and and I'll use that to do with the second segment here. The second segment is going to be pretty brief. This is more of a commentary at this point, but the second segment here is I'm basically offering is that on last night's Democrat debate, those are very hard to watch. So if anybody's tuning into those at this point, then kudos to you if you're still actually tuning into the actual Democrat debates at this level. But what I can say is, there were a lot of topics, of course, that came up, and of course, the issue of the illegal immigration, for one. As long as you continue to put blacks into a category that's under illegal immigrants and make provisions for them, but then you turn around and then you go over and say, okay, Bernie Sanders, we're gonna raise minimum wage to $15. Well, you've already undercut the black community economically. And maybe a skilled worker, somebody of a less education or high school, you're already undercutting that group of people. But then you want to add illegal immigration to it and sanctuary cities, so that a construction job, for African American or black, they're going to be underbid by illegal immigrants, illegal aliens. That's a counterproductive economic. It cancel each other out. It's a negation. So you're not creating opportunities in sanctuary cities. You're not creating opportunities at $15 an hour when you alienate people who are not of a skilled or of a formal institution granting professional background. You're making those jobs more competitive, and you're alienating the groups that are not that don't have as competitive skill or as competitive level in terms of education. And so, and then last night you had more. Just talk a little bit about Bernie. Of course, we've done segments before. It's all communism. He wants, you have a right to this, a right to that, health care for all, and of course, and he took the most attacks last night, and he basically says, oh, America is dealing with a racist system from top to bottom, is what he can be quoted for saying. His quote was, quote, we make certain that we end the sale and distribution of assault weapons in this country, and we go further, and we go further. So there again, here's another Bernie revealing himself as a communist. He's got communist ideas, disarming the people, and executive orders. And he also talked about racism, and we had conversations between him and Joe Biden regarding the black community about, and especially Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg was asked a question about the amount of the violence and the criminal records, how it basically rose under his leadership. And his response, he talked about the shootings, the violence, and about how the illegal drugs, but there again, nobody called Joe Biden out for his 1994 crime bill. So to me, they're kind of vastly in no man's land, because they're not really making changes. They're kind of doing two truths and a lie, and then they want to serve that up as them being proactive, or that they have a plan, which they don't have a plan. And their plan is to raise taxes, take more money from the American people, and basically wealth redistribution. And that's not just for the black community. That's something as a whole. As a whole, the country would need to be concerned about. First Amendment, Second Amendment. These are all things that are going to ultimately suppress liberty, self-governance, sovereignty, and just more dependence. Growing government. Government, it will be huge, and the people get smaller. So, if you would like to take a look further at, specifically our topic was Van Jones and CNN's report on Trump's effective strategies on the black community, I will put the link in the box for you. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining me again on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And as always, it's always helpful if you can like, subscribe, share. It really helps with suppression of conservative voices. Sharing, it helps with subscriptions. And if anything you can do would help with algorithms and the suppression that we deal with on this platform. So let me know what your concerns and comments are. And I will see you next time on Black Spring with Autumn.